Okay, I've got 5 o'clock. You ready, Brian? Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. This is our last weekly Zoom broadcast. This rolled out as part of the COVID-19 pandemic and how it was affecting Johnson. I do want to give everyone fair warning that our entertainment tonight, Isaac Eddy, will be using the comments that are made during our Zoom broadcast to write his song that he'll be singing later on. So be on your best behavior. As far as for the governor's reference here of the audience, we've had featured speakers, about a dozen of them, and it's ranged from all over with people who had certain expertise, and including many of your folks in your administration. Even the rock star himself, Dr. Levine, was one of our featured guests. So you've got some competition here. We have gone international. We had entertainment one night from Scotland, and tonight we have some folks on from Slovakia. So we're definitely international. With that, because the governor does have a hard stop, we're going to turn it right over to the governor. I want to thank him and appreciate everything he's been doing in this and his leadership, and thank him for joining us tonight. Governor, go ahead.
Well, thanks very much, and really appreciate having the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm not even going to try and compete with my hero, Dr. Levine. He's like our Dr. Fauci here in Vermont, and he's been a wealth of information and really a rock when it comes to a lot of our press conferences and disseminating information and making sure in plain language. And I think it's been instrumental. So I can imagine that you can appreciate how busy it's been lately dealing with this crisis, which has disrupted all our lives and put business on the brink of bankruptcy. With at one point, we had about 80,000 Vermonters out of work. With that, I've also had 3 press conferences a week, 2 hours plus every twice weekly, and which is somewhat unprecedented as well. Almost daily calls with governors and the administration in Washington and our congressional delegation as well, in constant contact with them. Also, a lot of interaction with every area of our government, especially the health department and Dr. Levine, our epidemiologists as well, Dr. Kelso, who's been great to work with. Then on top of all that, we still have the government to run. You know, we have to still provide public safety, social services, permits, registrations, licenses, and so forth. And then, as the legislators on the Zoom call can attest to, the legislature's still in session, and we're still trying. I mean, we get to close out fiscal year 20, which is going to end in another week. But we're also building at least part of a budget for fiscal year 21 with a lot of uncertainty. In many days here on the 5th floor, which again probably hasn't happened in decades, but due to social separation, many times I'm here in the office without any staff, and I'm sure you can all relate because we've all needed to become IT experts practically overnight. I'm still struggling a bit, but getting there. But I know I'm not alone. This has really been a once-in-a-century challenge for everyone. And it's hard to imagine. It was just 3 months ago when I declared the state of emergency. It was March 13th. In the beginning, we had to take a lot of steps in rapid fire to protect the lives of Vermonters and protect our healthcare system as well. That was first and foremost. Never in a million years did I think I would be the governor who would be closing down businesses and adversely affecting our state's economy. Because as you know, and I talked to many of you before, growing the economy has been my top priority since I took office. But public safety comes first. Lives were at stake, and these were our friends, our family, and neighbors. And I have to say, Vermonters really stepped up. And thanks to all of them, thanks to everyone's sacrifices, we're able to flatten that curve changed the trajectory of where we thought we were going. And it's not to say we're out of the woods yet, and we're seeing across the country a number of outbreaks. And we saw even here in our state, we had a recent outbreak in Winooski. But we're in a much better place to respond today using our enhanced testing and contact tracing strategy, so we can surround this virus like a fire. We can surround this virus when it flares up, instead of shutting down sectors of the state across the board like we did in March and April, and contain it. And so that I describe it like a smoldering ember, and if we see an ember starting to flare up, we really have to surround it and make sure that we don't let it flare up. And as soon as we started closing things down, I can assure you that my team began immediately working on an economic relief and recovery package to help businesses and communities. We've been listening to trade groups, community leaders, and industries about what their needs are. And a lot of times, we couldn't work as fast as they wanted us to, or open up as fast as we could, because we had to take the advice of our health experts. I said from the beginning that we had to rely on data, science, and that was going to come first. But as you've seen, we've taken this cautious, methodical approach, one that does get businesses open, but asking them to think creatively and do things differently to keep people safe. Every day, I personally look at all the regional data. I spend a few minutes in the morning, first thing in the morning, collecting all that data, talking with our health experts to decide where we can open the spigot just a little bit more. And we've also taken input from a broad group of leaders that has been incredibly helpful as we move forward. So it's well-rounded, and it's certainly trying to soak it all in, take all the advice we can. And while we been moving slowly to open back up, we need to as well move fast to help the businesses who are on the edge of bankruptcy, and through no fault of their own. There's a lot of a lot of business owners who are fearful of what's going to happen to them, because again, they've never been in this position. We saw business owners and people going through the unemployment process. Again, almost 80,000 people who had to go on either the PUA or the traditional unemployment, that had never been through the process ever in their lives, because they've always been able to take care of themselves. So that's why, a month ago, I proposed a $400 million package using the federal CARES dollars that were appropriated to the state, thanks to our congressional delegation. And it was to address the immediate needs of businesses, as well as strengthen the communities for a long-term recovery. We proposed $250 million in grants and loans for hardest hit sectors. And that a lot of those hard hit sectors were around the hospitality industry, affected by far the greatest restaurants and lodgings and so forth. But again, across the spectrum to others as well. We also included housing assistance to keep people in their homes, and as well as to help landlords from defaulting on loans, including as well funding for broadband. We wanted to make sure that we were able to do that. We know how now. We know again. We knew how important it was before, but it really highlighted the challenge that we have in our state and why we need it in the future. This is what Congress intended the money for, and we needed to help businesses survive right now, so they can thrive in the future. If we don't help them with their fractured foundation now, they aren't going to survive. They aren't going to be there in the future to generate the tax revenue the state desperately needs to fund critical services. So without them, they're our lifeblood, really. And if we don't help them survive, we are going to suffer for years in the future. And I know even 1.25 billion sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. It's not going to go far enough. This recovery is going to be long. It's going to be hard. But at the same time, I've seen the strength of Vermonters and what a powerful impact we can have when we're united. We're pulling in the same direction. And my team is committed as well, and we're going to turn every knob. Just pull every lever we can to help families and businesses survive and recover from this crisis. And so again, they can thrive in the future. But I'm also here and to sign. We have to do things virtually. Usually have some sort of celebration and bill signing ceremony. And this is maybe my second that I've done by video conference, but I'm going to sign H958 that the legislature has passed. It's a bill dealing with communications union districts. They're called CUDs, which sounds odd. So I'm going to use communications union districts. And this is an important bill because it's a vehicle for promoting broadband expansion, which again I've included in my economic relief package. This expansion is essential for attracting new employers, which will then attract high-paying jobs and encouraging both some growth in population and in the economy in our rural communities like Johnson. So this couldn't be more important in the current world we're living in right now. So with that, I'll sign this in front of you to make it official. One of I think 4 bills that are due today that I'm signing. There, that's that. So with that, Eric, I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have. And thank the legislators for their involvement with the bill. It really is a step in the right direction.
Okay, Brian, you want to open it up for questions?
Yeah, I've got Eric Hutchins up first.
Hi, Governor Scott. Thank you so much for coming. First, I want to thank you so much for the way you've handled the public health crisis. I think it's really amazing what you and your administration and my town members and Vermonters as a whole have put the public good first and look beyond partisan bickering and other problems that have plagued, as we can see, the rest of the country and the federal government have not followed our example and have showed a massive contrast to the way we've handled things here. And it makes me so proud to be a Vermonter, and I just really appreciate it. I'm more worried about the economic crisis that's coming up in that the federal government, I'm not sure they're going to come through with the assistance they should be providing. They should be deficit spending and providing money to the states, and I don't think they're going to do that. And so I have on that token, are you willing to take advantage of Vermont being the only state that does not have a statutory prohibition against deficit spending to take advantage of these low interest rates to help spend us out of this crisis rather than austerity cuts? And when we come to cuts in spending in the state, how are you going to see that those most able to pay, we're all in this together, are going to pay, and that people who might not survive without government help are going to survive? Out here in Johnson, cuts that close a business here, that business will be empty for years, that storefront. In Chittenden County, that'll be filled up next week. NVU is cut to be an existential crisis. UVM can probably handle it, right? Families making less than the median income out here are going to lose homes if we don't get assistance, where there are people in the state who can't afford it. So it's kind of a 2-part question. Are you willing to borrow the way Keynesian economics have shown have been successful in the past? And also, how are you going to just, cross the board cuts to education are going to hurt this town a lot more than Burlington? How can we make this happen? Thank you so much for your time. You've done a great job.
Well, thank you, Eric. And, I think the standard government practice is when you face a crisis like this, you just start cutting. And I'm, somewhat rejecting that. I don't think it has to be all about cutting. I mean, certainly we can do things better. We've proposed a number of measures over the last 3 years what we're going to do is to go back, take and dust off some of those ideas that we had that I think will provide more efficiency, as well as more opportunity to bring more dollars in. Because what we need to do is to make sure that we have more business, we have, again, more opportunity to bring in the dollars necessary. So I wouldn't say that we'll go, a knee-jerk reaction to just cuts across the board, because you're right. I mean, that doesn't help some of our Vermonters from to survive. So we'll take a different approach than that. I am thankful in some respects. I mean, not that we're not out of the woods by any stretch at this point, but our projected deficit has actually gone down a bit. At one point, we thought it was going to be in the general fund $300 or $400 million, but it looks like it's going to be in the low 200s now. And we'll know more. Every day we'll know a little bit more. We'll know we put off the filing date for taxes and so forth. We'll know a little bit more in the next month or so how we made out there, because I still believe that we'll have money coming in. We borrowed from the CARES Act to backfill fiscal year 20 in anticipation of those funds coming in. So there'll be more money, even though those monies were somewhat spent out of the CARES Act. They'll come back into play. So we'll have some more money to either appropriate to our businesses, depending on what is needed. And we're still waiting for more guidance. The guidance changes from the federal government as well. It happened to us, and even in the middle of the economic package that we passed, they changed the guidance after we put it all together, presented to the legislature. They changed the guidance, so we had to change course a little bit there. I'm assuming they're going to change it again. There'll be, and I do believe there'll be another appropriation of some sort to help out some of the states as well as municipal governments and so forth with their deficits. But hard to say at this point. Politics does come into play in Washington, especially. But even Congressman Welch had a bipartisan bill that he thinks is going to move to help some of the restaurants across the nation. So we'll see, how much money is associated with that. He thinks it's going to pass. I have a call into him to talk about some ideas that I have that might help our state as well in that regard, if it is going to pass. And a lot of it will depend, on November as well. And I'm talking on the federal level. Who knows who's going to be in office at that point, and that can change the dynamics a lot as well. So, long-winded way of saying we have there's a lot of opportunity for us. There's going to be some pain regardless of what happens. We can't rely on Washington to fix all our problems, and we can't just go down the path of just cutting. And there is some opportunity to, I don't know if it's deficit spending or borrowing, but there are some opportunities for us to do something different and unique, and we'll learn, as we go. But I have some ideas on that as well to try and make this budget as palatable as possible. But again, taking advantage of this time to do things better and to dust off some of the ideas that many of us had about how we generate more revenue.
Thank you, Governor. All right, I've got Beth up next. Go ahead, Beth.
Thank you for joining us, Governor. It's very much appreciated, and you are the best groupie of the rock star I can think of. So thank you very much for, acting on the recommendations. The thing that I just want to bring up is, well, one thing I want to say really quick is broadband, beyond promoting it, it has become a vital utility. So I just don't want to I want to use the word vital in our talking about broadband at this point. But then the other request is, I know that the Vermont State College System Board of Trustees has a vacancy that's coming up, and my understanding is you recommend an appointee, and my request is that that appointee come from the Northern Tier to properly reflect all that the Northern Tier brings to the state system, which is a lot, and it brings to our economy and to the many, many other things that Northern Vermont University brings to Vermont, including our younger demographic. I know in your state address, whenever it was, a year ago maybe now, maybe less, you talked about the younger demographic being problematic in our state, and I would just like to talk about NVU being champion in bringing that younger demographic to Vermont and growing and keeping our younger demographic here. So my request of you is to support Northern Vermont University as much as you possibly can to help further and grow all that it could become, and frankly will become. I have confidence in the university and all it brings. So my request of you is to also help us champion all that NVU brings to Vermont as a whole, and particularly in Northern Vermont. And please help with the bot representative from our Northern Tier. That would be very much appreciated.
It's interesting because I could have the same conversation with the Rutland County group. Because they feel equally as strong that they need a representative from Rutland because of Castleton and so forth. But certainly I understand the need up in the Northeast. I'm very concerned about the rural. I was concerned before this pandemic, and that hasn't changed, about the rural communities across the state. You know, I talked about this in my state address, numerous state addresses. About the two Vermonts, and we have, I'm not trying to take anything away from Chittenden County because they're helping support us, the rest of us, but we need to make sure we pay attention to the other 13 counties because they're suffering, and we need to bolster that, and we need to do what we can to build upon that, the Northeast Kingdom in particular. So when they first talked about, they presented the plan when Jeff Spalding was still the chancellor, and he had said about closing some of the schools. And I said, well, if we're going to close anything, we should close one in Chittenden County, not in the rural parts of the state, because they can live without another college or facility in that county, but not so much in some of the other regions. So again, I'm on board with trying to protect the vulnerable rural parts of our state, and I know how vital this is, broadband vital, but also these institutions that are everything. We look back, look at Poultney and what they went through, and I don't know if you've been to Poultney, but pretty much the only thing happening in that town was Green Mountain College. And they lost it, and it's just they could feel the impacts, and it's devastating. So we've seen this ripple effect with many of the small colleges in Vermont, and again, we're not unique. It's happening all over the Northeast in particular. They're losing small colleges, but again, we have something to sell. I think this pandemic has proved that we're a safe and healthy state before, and we still have that going for us, and we need to promote that to attract more people to here, to the state, as well as to our colleges and universities.
Yeah, we need to financially invest in it, right? So this is an opportunity to grow our state and grow our rural communities that do struggle. And when you want to grow something, you need to invest in it, and investing in it means putting money toward it. So I think it is, extremely important that we're putting our money to the areas that we need to grow most. And I would argue our colleges are those areas.
The only problem with with our colleges in particular, the state college system, is we're suffering because of our demographics here in the state. 90% of those who enrolled in our state colleges came from Vermont. They were Vermont kids, Vermont students. And when you look at what's happened to us over the last 20 years, I talked about this a lot, but losing 30,000 students. We were up to 103, 105,000 students at one time. That's what our K-12 system was built for. Over 100,000 students. We're down to low 70s now. So we've lost 30,000 students over the last 20 years. And those are the kids that went to the state colleges. So if we can invest. It's hard to compete against some of the bigger states, and we can invest, but we need to sell the product to somebody. And it can't be, there's not enough kids here in Vermont to do that. So we're going to have to find ways to attract those kids from out of state to come to the state. That's the only way we're going to do it, because it just plain isn't enough kids here to solve the problem. So we have to keep that in mind as we're investing this. It's got to be, we've got to find ways to attract them from other states. Just not enough kids here.
Perhaps we'll talk on the streets of Montpelier someday. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, Leah, I've got you up next. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Leah Kilvadiova. I live in Johnson, and I also work for the Regional Planning Commission here in Lamoille. And I don't have a question. I just really wanted to thank you for bringing the bill related to communications union districts to the finish line. From having worked with Lamoille towns, I know that they're eager to take that vote to be able to create a communications union district. I am aware of 5 towns that are lining up their select board votes for early July. So thank you again very much for making this happen for Lamoille and hopefully other regions as well.
Yeah, this will help a number of communities throughout Vermont, but I know it's not enough. We need to put money behind it. There'll be some CARES Act money that will go towards this, but again, that won't be enough. I really believe this is the initiative that the federal government should take on. Congress should take this on, because again, we're not unique here in Vermont. This is happening in other states throughout the country. And we should look at this as an REA type of time, where the Rural Electrification Act. This is as important as electricity was back in the day. So we need to, for them to take this on and put some, take and invest in our country in this way will bring us into the 21st century that we're behind on, to be honest with you. So this is an opportunity for them to do something good for infrastructure. And I believe the timing is right. The need is there, and this will not only provide jobs in terms of building it out, but also the ripple effect of bringing more opportunity into Vermont for businesses and individuals that will be, again, bringing more revenue in as well. So I think it's something that people could rally behind from all walks of life. I don't think this is one of those areas that there will be a lot of challenges to. It just is the moment in time that we should act, and I believe that Congress should take this up. We'll put enough into it to somewhat put a Band-Aid on our problem, but this needs significant dollars to make this work, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Leah. All right, Shane, I've got you up next.
Thank you for being here, Governor, and for signing that bill in front of us. That was pretty cool, and I know that's going to have a big impact on us out here, so really appreciate that. But I want to talk about the colleges as well. I think that, other people have brought up some pretty important points, the power that they have in dealing with our demographic challenges, the fact that losing this college out here would be an existential threat to our community. It would devastate this area of the state. Whereas, a cut of the same size to UVM might not do the same to Chittenden County. But what I think is really important in this conversation is viewing the colleges as an economic development tool, because that's something that I think has been missing all along. When we had your Secretary of Commerce and Community Development on back at the beginning of the COVID crisis, I think it was one of our first town calls. And I asked her at the time if she had seen any of the numbers about how the proposed closure of the colleges would impact the economic development of Northern Vermont. And she said no, she hadn't seen any numbers, which said to me that we aren't viewing the state colleges as a tool for economic development, which I think they are. It's obvious that they are. And so I guess my question to you is, is there a way that we can get these different parts of government working together more effectively so that we see the state colleges for what they're able to accomplish and all of the different goals that we have that they're able to help us out with?
Well, certainly it's not lost on us. I've talked a lot about the cradle to career opportunities that we have as part of economic development as well. We spend a tremendous amount of money for education in this state. This year, I think it's $1.8 billion, the single largest expenditure by far in state government that we have. Our total budget with federal dollars is over $6 billion. When you think about that, and 1.8 billion is education, and about half of that is in human services. It doesn't leave a lot of money for economic development. So you have to look at how do we do things differently. And my thought is that we treat education, again, from cradle, early care and learning, should be building that foundation is important for our kids as well. Some higher education as well, and bringing, broadening the spectrum without spending a lot more money, because we're not doing it. If we had, I had a check for $1.8 billion, and I said, "Here you go, Shane. Build us a new education system." I dare say it wouldn't look anything like it does today. And we have to be bold about this. We have to be objective and honest about what we're trying to do, and so that we're not spending our limited resources on something that isn't giving us the return that we need. We don't have the best education system in the country. We have a good education system. It's not that efficient sometimes, but we can have the very best for what we're spending, and broaden it. So I think having that more money to invest out of that bucket is part of the answer. Because again, as you know, there's not we tax a lot of things in this state. It's not as though we're not spending enough. It's just that we're not spending it in the right areas. So they're limited. We can't keep adding to it, but we can learn. Again, as I said, I'd like to dust off a few of the ideas that we've had over the last 3 years, and maybe some previous to that, because I'm sure there's a whole stack of economic ideas there somewhere that are still current today that we can take advantage of. We don't, I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers, but collectively we have some answers, and we just need to get to the table and present them, and not let it turn political, and just do what's right for us, and take advantage of the situation that we find ourselves in, and come out stronger than we were before, because with every crisis comes some opportunity, and we just have to search for that and take advantage of it when we see it.
Thank you very much. I just hope we do the things that make it more resilient for the next crisis.
Yeah. Eric or Brian, I'm going to have to leave shortly. I could probably fit in one more question. If,
I was just going to bring that up. We crashed right through your hard stop.
yeah.
So if you got one more question, Brian?
Sure. I'll go ahead and call on Greg.
Hi, Governor. How are you?
Hey, Greg.
Nice to see you. You're looking good. Been quite a battle.
It has been long and hard for all of us, not just not for me, but certainly, this, I remark a lot. I'm used to in the construction industry. You work long hours, a lot of days, but this has been it's been a steady grind every day, 7 days a week for over 3 months. It's been difficult, but again, you have to do what you can when the opportunity comes before you.
It looks like you've done a real nice job. That people are talking throughout the country that we may have the best model in the country with your leadership, and we certainly appreciate that. And to me, if we're the best in the country, who knows, we may be the best in the world. So your team has been outstanding. One of the questions I have for this pre-Act 250 lots, Governor, because I really think the root of our problems in this state are a lack of business and a lack of population. Until we turn what I feel is kind of an anti-business sentiment in the state, we're probably never going to come out of this funk. And I believe pre-approved Act 250 lots for some businesses would put us ahead of New Hampshire, because they're so much quicker than we are that it's hard for us to catch up. So I wondered if you'd ever thought of pre-approving Act 250 lots for businesses, and maybe it would help bring business and people into the state. And thank you for coming here tonight.
Yeah, Greg, we actually have proposed an Act 250 bill. It's making its way through the legislative process. It hit some stumbling block in the Senate over the weekend. In fact, I worked on it with our team on Sunday, numerous conference calls trying to find some middle ground. And but unfortunately, there wasn't a willingness to take the middle ground at this point. So they had some again, they were trying to attach it in the Senate to a housing bill, and it was determined not to be germane to the bill yesterday. So I don't know what they're going to do. I assume that it may not pass before the recess, but they'll pick it back up maybe in August. But it's important. We have some common sense changes we'd like to make. We had some of the environmental groups on board with us, which was good for us to get together. We worked in the off season before the legislature started in getting people together so that we weren't in the position we're in today. But it unfortunately went off track and with the pandemic and everything else. And I'm afraid it's turning a bit political at this point. So we're going to keep trying. Hopefully we'll get something passed, because there's a better way of doing things. Protecting the environment is important, and what the changes that we are encouraging will continue to protect the environment, but it'll just be done in a more efficient way, so that there is some predictability, and that's and focusing on some of the downtowns and villages and growth centers, so that they're, if you have an entity in place that you can take care of some of your own provisions of Act 250 and some of the trails that we see that are actually bringing people into the state are protected, so that you don't have to go through Act 250 when you want to go to like Kingdom Trails, biking up in the Burke would have to go through Act 250 under our present laws, and we'd like to get an exemption for entities like that. So there are a lot of opportunities for us. I'm still hoping that we can get a deal at some point. It may not be this week, maybe it'll be in August, but it's much needed right now for economic growth, as well as just, again, it's just a more efficient, effective way and getting everyone what they need, and not just use it for block development, but actually build smarter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Technology's great. My computer just decided to reboot itself, but I'm got onto my wife's iPad. I do want to thank you for zooming in on us. We truly appreciate it. And have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you, Brian. Thank you all for being here and persevering through this troubling time. It's the strength of our communities that will get us through. So thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. This is our last weekly Zoom broadcast. If things change in the future, or if we have some major announcements, we'll have a Zoom broadcast maybe once a month or as appropriate. Like I said, if we go back into another outbreak throughout the state, then we probably would or may start them up again. With that, I guess unless there's anybody who has any questions for any of the rest of us, we will move it on to the rec coordinator and Isaac, who's our entertainment tonight.
Hello, hello, hello. I want to thank Lisa, and I want to thank this whole crew here for inviting us back. We are the first entertainment in this meeting, and we are the last, and we are so appreciative to be here again and to celebrate this town. I love this town. My family loves this town, and we are here because of NVU. And I have to say that standing shoulder to shoulder with all of you, socially distanced, of course, to protest the recommended closure made me just feel so much more proud to be a member of Johnson. And I'm just so grateful to be able to raise my family here. So thank you, thank you. And those questions for our governor were just made me even more proud. We have 3 songs for you. 2 of them are ones that I wrote with my 2 kids. And then the final one is the Friends of Johnson song, which we sang at the last time we were here. And all of the verses are from your suggestions of all the amazing things that we have in our town. And we will sing that last. But the first song is called The Coronavirus Monster. And it is based on a story by Aria right here. And she told me the story in the first week of the shutdown here in Vermont. And each day she woke up and she asked if it was still coronavirus day, almost like it was a snow day. And we had to say, yes, it's still coronavirus day. And she told me the story, and we made it into a song. I hope you enjoy. And Hero here is gonna sing along with me. This is a song about coronavirus day, about a monster so mean he didn't even want to play. He was so big, he was taller than the sky. He sat on the sun, felt like the earth was gonna cry. He sat on the sun, felt like the earth was gonna die. You gotta learn, 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 learn. You gotta learn. You gotta love, 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 love. You gotta love. I'm just a kid, but I am strong, and I'm not even scared. I tiptoed up behind him, and I sang the song with great care. The monster turned around, teardrops in his eyes. He let go of the sun, we watched it rise back to the sky. He let go of the sun, we watched it rise back to the sky. You gotta learn, 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 love, 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 you gotta learn. You gotta love, 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 you gotta love. I am older now, but the monster's still around. Every time I get mad, I feel him pulling me to the ground. But I also know that the sun is still here too. I feel that warm, welcoming light every time I'm with you. And feel that warm, welcoming light every time I look at you. You gotta learn, 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 learn. You gotta learn. You gotta love, 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 love. You gotta love. You gotta learn, 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 learn. You gotta learn. You gotta love. You gotta love. You gotta love. All right. And this next song is called Wildflowers for Miles. I wrote this song with Hero, and the words are primarily from her. We found it really helpful in this time during the pandemic and during this time where we're all reflecting on racial injustice and systemic racism, to just be together and be aware of each other and to sing together. And this is something that came from that. Wind blows in the winter, wind blows in the spring, wind blows in the summer, wind blows in the fall. One thing that I know, one thing that is true. I love you. I love you. Wildflowers grow for miles, stars grow for years, leaves fall forever, snowflakes fall like tears. One thing that I know, one thing that is true. I love you. I love you. All right, so now our last song, and thanks again, everybody, for hosting these every week. It's been incredibly helpful to feel connected, just not only to the town, but to the state. And I agree, Governor Scott has done such an amazing job with keeping us all safe and healthy. And I was always proud to be a Vermonter growing up here, and I'm so proud to be back in this state 18 years later. Let's do Friends of Johnson. My friends of Johnson, we are never alone. Thanks to my friends of Johnson, I'm proud to call you my home. There's Downtown Pizza and Ebenezer Books and the Belonging Protest every Tuesday. There's swimming behind the church and that Black Lives Matter protest at Old Mill Park. Thanks to my friends of Johnson, we are never alone. My friends of Johnson, I'm proud to call you my home. There's the skate park and the essential workers at Sterling Market. And of course, there's Brian Story for putting this meeting together. And there's swimming in Guion on these wonderful, sweltering days. And thank you to Governor Scott. We're so appreciative of your words, my friends of Johnson. We are never alone. Thanks to my friends of Johnson. I'm proud to call you my home. There's Johnson Rec. Thank you, Lisa Cruz, and the Historical Society, and all that wonderful pie. And there's the local library and the emergency management team. That is Eric Osgood, Nat Kinney, Gordy Smith, Scott Meyer, and Meredith Dolan. Those are my friends of Johnson. We are never alone. Thanks to my friends of Johnson. I'm proud to call you my home. I love NBU, all those students and staff, and the professors and the facilities. Of course, there's Lamoille Paddlers and the trail and the log trail where all those wonderful trails meet. There's also Johnson's access to the rivers and trailheads and nature's beauty, and Johnson's tri-trail activity. I love those icy winters and those summer flows of the Lamoille, and those hand-painted signs of signs of hope and love all around. Ooh, my friends of Johnson, we are never alone. Thanks to my friends of Johnson, I'm proud to call you my home. Don't forget Jasmine and the pizza oven and that wonderful rec program. And Tuesday Night Live, we miss you so much. But I know that we're gonna be back because we're Vermont strong. My friends of Johnson, we are never alone. Thanks to my friends of Johnson, I'm proud to call you my home. Last verse, we got the socially distanced dinner, concerts at Moog's Joint. We got that wonderful Johnson Jubilee, and we got Johnson's inclusivity statement and our fights against racism, and we love JES and all the great people there. And we got Johnson's small businesses, just like that studio store, and the folks that they all support. And there's Johnson Works, and all those cool activities, and the community members for asking hard questions of the governor, and these grassroots efforts that cause amazing change and support. Thanks to my friends of Johnson, we are never alone. My friends of Johnson, I'm proud to call you my home. Johnson, we love you. Good night.
Thank you, Isaac, and thank you, your daughters too. They did a great job. Brian, why don't you just open up everyone's mics? I just want to say a couple of things. I hope everyone has enjoyed these weekly broadcasts. It is, and there were some comments about let's continue it. I think it's run its course. The numbers were starting to dwindle. I think when we started it, everyone was ordered to stay at home, and you were basically shut in because the weather wasn't nice. Now the weather's getting nice. The days are longer. More people are able to get outside and enjoy it. No longer required to stay at home. So I think it's the right time. But Brian and I were communicating that we could open up the Zoom broadcast if anybody wanted to just come in at 5 o'clock. It won't be a programmed event. It would just be a free for all, and talk to your neighbors or read poetry or whatever, as long as it's legal. But Brian, if you want to open up everybody's mic, or can you? And anybody who wants to view some of these past ones, I believe they've all been recorded on Green Mountain Access, so they are still available if anybody wanted to go back through some of them.
They are all on Green Mountain Access, and anybody can unmute themselves now if they want to share.
And I do want to thank some of the regulars who are always here. I'm looking at Beth and Dan. I know you guys and Doug about every time. I know we've had some other legislators, Matt and Richie and Lucy was on. Appreciate everyone's participating.
All right. Is there anybody who?
Anybody wants to say anything, you can unmute yourself.
No, I guess maybe some people are still having trouble with it. I think I've got it all turned off, but.
Dan, say something. You're not shy.
But you got to unmute yourself first, Dan.
Yeah. Maybe he can't. Beth, you can't? I guess nobody can.
I had trouble unmuting, so I asked Brian for permission, but anyway, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
I think it was unique. I think Johnson's the only one that did it.
All right. Yeah, a few people are asking, but we are still having some trouble with people unmuting themselves. All right, I'm really reluctant to just turn everybody's microphones on.
Well, if we lose everybody, I guess it'll be the end.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do it. Turning everyone's microphones on. So, okay, go ahead.
Yay!
Thank you.
Yay! Now you got it.
Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Yeah, okay, hi. Okay.
Oh, that's funny.
This is my favorite part of the meeting.
Maybe
Yeah,
you
for
just
sure.
wanted to do a group yay. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Eric.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you guys. This has been great, and I will definitely miss it.
Okay.
Very cool.
But I'll see you at select board meetings.
That's right.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night to everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.